All right, guys, we're going to talk about the Great Depression, the causes and the effects of it using this PowerPoint. So, this is chapter 21. In the election of 1828, we have two candidates, Republican and Democrat. Herbert Hoover is a Republican. Um, People liked him better because all the other Republican presidents had made the 1920s pretty booming. Whereas Al Smith, the Democrat, he had three strikes against him. One, he was from New York City, so he was a city guy. He was anti-prohibition, meaning he wanted drinking to be legal again, and he was also Catholic. You got to remember, most people at that time were Protestants, so they didn't really like Catholics. What I thought was pretty interesting is Herbert Hoover's acceptance speech. He said, "We in America today are near to the final triumph over poverty than ever before in this history of this land. We shall soon, with the help of God, be in the sight of day when poverty will be banished from this land." He really thought that poverty was gone. They were right on the breaking point, and then boom, Great Depression happens, and we have a unemployment rate of 25%. This is the electoral map. As you can see, Mr. Al Smith did not do so well. He only won a couple states. He didn't even win his home state of New York. So it was a blowout. Hoover won. They really liked what was going on with the Republicans and their ideas. That's him next to Babe Ruth. Have a nice little smile, but he will not be smiling for much soon. So, reasons for the Great Depression, you don't have to copy this down. The first five are the causes of it. It's like a perfect storm of how the Great Depression occurred. What it led to: bank failures, business failures, and unemployment. So, we'll get into that in a little bit. All right, first off, we have the reason. All right, reason one was the credit. Americans got really addicted to buying things on credit. They didn't have the cash up front, so they planned on paying for it a little bit later on. These were called installment plans. We don't get credit cards until about the 1950s, 1960s. So as you can see with the statistics, more people were using credit by 1929 compared to 1915. And the reason why they did this is because the government had interest rates so low, so it promoted people, promoted business, and promoted the idea that you can just borrow it and pay for it later, not anticipating any bad things happening like Great Depression, medical issues, unemployment. But what eventually happens is people get in so much debt because they have all this credit that they haven't paid for. They can't really purchase any more goods because nobody will give them that credit. And as a result, people stop buying goods. This leads to a slow economic progress, meaning businesses aren't selling anything. Second reason is the stock market. During the 1920s was a bull market, meaning the stock prices just kept going up and up and up, and it just seemed like it was never going to go down. Even though only 2% of the U.S. invests in the stock market, they borrowed a lot of that money, which is going to affect the rest of the country. Some things that they did, there was stock speculation, meaning they would buy and sell really quickly just to get a quick profit. So if the stock price went up by $2, they'd sell it, take that profit, invest in something else. And this, because of the demand and supply curve, people really thought people were demanding it. Prices went up as a result. Another thing that happened is a lot of these businesses had inaccurate books. There's no laws against you putting whatever you wanted as a profit margin. So even though the businesses weren't doing really well, the books were cooked, meaning that it looked like they were very profitable, and this kind of misled a lot of investors. The thing that got everybody in trouble, though, was the idea of margin buying. This is when you purchase stocks with borrowed money. That means if you are trying to invest $1,000 in it, okay, you borrow 90% of it from a bank to pay for it, and you only put 10% down on it. So you're only putting $100 down on this. You're borrowing $900 from the bank, and when that stock market price goes down, all of a sudden you can't pay the bank back, and as a result, the banks could possibly fail because they're borrowing other people's money to give you that loan that they feel you're going to pay back. A little confusing. I'll explain that a little bit more detail in class using some numbers. Stock market continued. Black Thursday, October 24, 1929, was a big drop, a huge drop in the stock market. It actually settled pretty much on Friday, and it settled again on Monday. So everybody thought it was just like a little dip in the stock market. And then bang, on Tuesday, they call it Black Tuesday. A couple days later, $30 billion lost in one day. And you can see, using these stock prices as an example, GE was $396 in 1929. By 1932, it went down to $34. So if you were paying for GE $396 a share and you went down, you lost a lot of money, okay? And you couldn't pay back that money to the bank that you owed using margin value, and GE was cooking its books and also using a lot of speculation. So it went from a bull market to a bear market where the prices went down. Here is a clip from Brooklyn Daily Eagle, Wall Street panic as stocks crash. We'll show you that clip from America's Story Bus to show you how bad it was, and I explain it in pretty good detail. This is Wall Street after the stock market crash. It's rumored that all these people committed suicides immediately after. It's actually untrue. It didn't happen, but people were definitely freaking out a little bit. Reason number 3, European war debts. Because these countries are in so much massive war debts, they stopped buying American goods. So because of our assembly lines like Henry Ford and our mass production, we expected Europe to keep buying, and they stopped because they couldn't afford it anymore. To make matters worse, we passed the Smoot-Hawley tariff, which raised the tariffs on our goods coming from other countries. So if England is trying to trade with us, we put a tariff on it. And in return, England did the same thing. They started putting a tariff on our goods. So essentially, all these countries put huge walls up and disallowed buying and selling of goods on a global market, meaning the depression is not just going to be in the U.S., it's going to be all over the world. Reason 4, conservative policies. With the Republicans in place, they kind of just rip out all the progressive legislation that was put. There's no regulation on businesses because everybody's doing so well. Don't even pay attention. Let's not pass any more new laws, like the Meat Inspection Act or anything like that. Just let businesses do what they do. Secondly, the government did tax cuts for the wealthy. This idea of the trickle-down theory, that if you cut taxes, the wealthy have more money, they can expand their businesses, and as a result, that money will trickle down to the middle class and the poorest. The problem is, if you're wealthy and you get extra money, you're not going to invest it, you're going to hold on to it. So that money never really got down to the poor, and it really affects the middle and lower classes. The labor unions, they started attacking because they associated them with socialists and communists. So people weren't getting paid a good amount for their workmanship and were working long hours again, just as they'd done in the Second Industrial Revolution. And with the high protected tariffs, people from other countries stopped buying our goods, we became less profitable, and that's going to affect our businesses. These are all policies passed by Republicans in the 1920s. So that's trickle-down theory. As you can see, the government gives all this money to the wealthy, and that money is supposed to eventually trickle down to the different areas. But as you can see, the poor classes barely get anything. Here's just a political cartoon just to talk about trickle-down theory. You can check it out on your own time. All right, last but not least, overproduction. All right, we have the farmers who were producing all the food for Europe, especially during World War I, because they were ravaged by war. They needed our goods. We became so good at farming that we overproduced. The prices of goods dropped, and as a result, the money that we made was not enough to pay for all the debts. Like seeds are expensive, tractors are expensive, all these other things are expensive. Prices going down, we can't pay for that stuff back. It leads to foreclosures on homes. It leads to foreclosures and bankruptcy with banks. And the farmers are the first ones to really suffer in the 1920s. While people in the cities were doing okay, farmers are really struggling. They're the first ones to experience depression. Same thing with industry. We produce so much stuff, people stop buying, and all of a sudden businesses are going to fail as a result. All right, we're going to stop there, and I'll continue with the effects a little bit later on. Thank you. Have a good day.